Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know me by now, my name is David. I also go by MillerFootball, and today we're going to be continuing my series where I'm going division by division, team by team, and pick by pick to hand out grades for the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, before we dive into this, I just want you all to keep in mind that I'm not saying I know better than any of these GMs or any of the scouts that actually put in the work to draft these players. I'm just a 20-year-old college kid with way too much free time on my hands, and over the past few months, I decided to spend that time watching tape on NFL prospects. So I have my own evaluations, I have my own opinions, that's what all of these grades are based off of. So when I say Team X should have taken player Y instead of player Z, just keep in mind, I'm not saying I know better than their GM, it's just what I would have done. And if you want to check out the other videos that I've done in this series so far, I've covered the NFC North and the AFC North. Those will be linked in a playlist down in the description, but obviously we're going to be talking about the NFC West today. So let's go ahead and dive into it and start out with the Arizona Cardinals. Alright, so like I said, kicking things off with the Arizona Cardinals, this is a pretty significant draft class as it's the first draft for new general manager Monty Ossenfort. And he did one thing that I really liked, especially when you look at some of the more recent Cardinals draft classes, and that's actually pay attention to the trenches. The last few years, the Cardinals have been best described, in my opinion, as squishy in the trenches, and that's to say that they really haven't prioritized there, so they had guys that could just kind of be moved around, especially on the defensive line, but their offensive line obviously hasn't been great either. So Monty Ossenfort realized this, and decided to prioritize the trenches, whether it's defensive linemen or at least edge rushers or taking an offensive tackle in the top 10 picks. That's awesome to see. That's how you build a football team. You build from the trenches out. I personally believe that's the best way to do it. And obviously, you win games in the trenches. So focusing on that, prioritizing that is a big deal. And obviously, as well, they were a team that both traded down and traded up. Traded down with the Houston Texans, got their first round pick next year, which is huge. I really thought it would end up being the Cleveland pick when we saw that Houston traded back up to 3. It wasn't, which really shocked me. That's great for the Cardinals. Now they're going to be in position where, you know, at least according to the odds and like off-season predictions, probably going to have 2 top 5 picks, which is fantastic for them. They could be in a position to, I really like Kyler. So I wouldn't take a guy like Caleb Williams if they land with the first overall pick. I would probably try to trade out of that and give it to a team that needs a quarterback and get even more back. But, Caleb Williams is this almighty prospect that might be the next Mahomes, so maybe that's the direction they'll want to go, and then they can get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. or something. They have a lot of options next year if they have 2 top 5 picks, which is very possible. But looking at what they've already gotten, looking at this first draft class here, we've got Paris Johnson Jr. with the 6th overall pick, and I really like this for Arizona. Paris Johnson Jr. for me was the second best offensive tackle in the class, only behind Darnell Wright. And he was a top 20 player in the class for me. So taking him at 6, a very important position of need there at left tackle. Maybe he even plays guard early on, who knows. Getting a guy that can protect whoever your quarterback long-term is going to be. Again, I think it should be Kyler Murray. That's huge. But looking at Paris Johnson specifically, big-time athlete, just really good athletic tools. He's a super dominant run blocker and will probably be a big-time impact day one, whether it's at tackle or at guard. He's got a little bit of technical deficiency as a pass blocker at tackle, which is understandable given that he only has 1 year of experience at the position under his belt. That's not something that I am super worried about with him. I think that's something that will definitely just come with time and development and coaching. His hand placement and his reaction time, again, needs some improvement, but it's very much a transitional thing, right? Switching from guard to tackle, he was good last year, but there were definitely areas where you saw that he needs to improve. But again, I'm not super worried about that. But that being said, he could even play guard right away. The Cardinals have a bunch of tackles that they're trying to sort out, and some of them are probably going to kick inside. So maybe right away, just so he's comfortable playing, you play him at guard. That's not what I'd do, but definitely the possibility there. But overall, he has super high upside at tackle because of these athletic traits, and the fact that he's already going to be a really good run blocker is huge for them. And I think Paris Johnson can be a franchise left tackle for them. So grading the move by itself, just the pick, I would give it an A. But if you want to go that extra mile and factor in, the trade they made to still land a guy like this and factor in the picks they got back from moving down, you could easily call this an A++++++, right? I'm not going to do all that. I'm only here to focus on the player, and I really like Paris Johnson Jr., so I would definitely give this an A. And then we move on to the second round pretty early on, and they take edge rusher B.J. Ojulari out of LSU. And Ojulari is another player that I really like. He was the 6th best edge in the class for me, definitely had a late first round, early second round grade on him, so getting him here in the early second round makes a lot of sense. They're currently assembling a really nice edge group. I don't think they have that true alpha yet, a guy like Nick Bosa or Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, but they've got a lot of really nice complementary players, and B.J. Ojulari, I think, is the best of that group, or at the very least will be the best of that group. And the reason I say he's not a true alpha is just because he doesn't quite have the physical tools to do so, in my opinion. He's not super strong, he's not the most athletic guy in the world. He's good, but those tools are definitely going to hold back his ceiling. But that being said, he has a pretty high floor, and that's going to be thanks to his football IQ and his pass rush tool belt, so to speak, because he has a million ways to beat you, right? He's not the best run defender in the world either, which I don't love. I'm a big fan of edges that can defend the run, so if you can't, I'm not a huge fan of it. But that being said, as a pass rusher, he's going to be one of the better guys from this class right away. He's not the strongest guy in the world, like I said, but he does have more power than you think. He can bull rush guys. Good bend. He's a good finesse rusher. Super smart, just overall technically sound edge. He's got really long arms. Length is a big thing for edge rushers too. So, he's a player that I really like. And because of that, once again, I'm going to give the Cardinals an A for this pick. They drafted him probably right about where I'd take him, if not a little bit later than I would have taken him, so good value. Just a good player that's going to serve a very big role on the Cardinals' defense, will be their best pass rusher from day one, and hopefully will end up being a mighty fine Robin to somebody's Batman down the line. And then we move to the third round, and with the 72nd pick, they took cornerback Garrett Williams, and this was another really nice pick. The Cardinals' secondary going into the draft might have been the worst position group in football. Across the board, with all 32 teams taken into account, probably the worst position group in football. So Garrett Williams is going to be somebody that's going to step in day one and be the best guy in the room. Now, I will admit he's not somebody that I was super familiar with before the draft, so I went back, had to do my homework, watch a little tape, and I came away pretty impressed. I like what I saw. He's going to be playing in a similar system from college under Gannon, the new defensive coordinator. It's that Fangio-style quarters off-zone coverage type of defense. And that's really good for him. He's a corner that relies on his ability to make quick decisions and read the eyes of the quarterback as well as reading wide receivers, so that's perfect for him. Just overall, really technically sound guy, really good footwork and agility. Pretty disciplined guy as well, not grabbing coverage by any means. He doesn't have the best ball skills in the world, which is a bit of an issue, but me personally, if a corner can lock somebody down and take them out of a play, then I'm not as worried about how they play the ball. And that's kind of what Garrett Williams is. He's more of a lockdown guy than a playmaker, so that's perfectly fine. But he'll probably be the best corner in this room for at least his rookie year, if not longer. He's got really good upside, and I think he can be really good for the Cardinals. So this is another pick that I'm going to give an A to, and that's 3 picks in a row for Arizona that are getting an A for me. I really like what they did to start out this draft. And with their other pick in the third round, pick 94, the Cardinals selected wide receiver Michael Wilson out of Stanford, and this is another player that I was a big fan of. This wide receiver class isn't necessarily one that blew me away, but Michael Wilson was definitely a guy that stood out. He was my wide receiver 6. I had a pure second round grade on him. So getting him here in the third round is good value, and it's so late in the third round, it's borderline a 4th round pick. So getting him late in the third round is incredible value. One of the big things for Wilson, or with Wilson for me, is his ability as a run blocker. He's great at it. He's technically refined. He's physical. He's very willing. And I know that isn't the end-all be-all of a wide receiver, but I'm old school. I love a wide receiver that's willing to get down in 30. And that tough physical nature shows up in his abilities as a pass catcher as well, both at the point of attack and after the catch. He has a great release. He's a super savvy route runner, so he's a guy that it's kind of hard to keep up with, but if you do keep up with him, he's got a big frame. He's 6'2", 213 pounds. And with that physical nature of his, he's not afraid to go up and make a play on a 50-50 ball. He's not afraid to go up and get physical and get in a corner's face and make something happen. He tracks the ball pretty well too, and his hands are pretty consistent, so all of that together makes for a really good receiver. Now, he's not perfect. Obviously, his health is pretty spotty. He had a season-ending injury in 2020 that cut into his 2021 season, and then he had another season-ending injury in 2022. So I get why he fell, that on top of the fact that he played at Stanford, so he wasn't the most productive guy in the world. But if you're looking at it from a pure talent standpoint, he's one of the best guys in this class at the receiver position. He was lower for me because of that injury history, but if that wasn't there, he could have been in the conversation for one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in the class, in my opinion. He needs a little bit of polish, but you know, as a wide receiver too, which I think is what he projects as, you can't get much better than that. Like him next to D-Hop, which might not be the case long-term. I know there's talks of him getting traded again, but him next to maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. next year would be a fantastic 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position. He's just a super reliable guy is the way I'm going to put it. I'm not going to say consistent because of the injuries, but when he's on the field, he's super reliable, and I really like what he brings to the table. So, once again, I'm going to give the Cardinals an A for this pick. This is another pick that I'm a huge fan of, and quite honestly is probably my favorite pick they made just because of how much I like Michael Wilson as a player. Moving on to the 4th round, the Cardinals selected offensive lineman John Gaines II, and if I'm being totally honest, I don't have a whole lot to say about this pick. I didn't watch him before the draft, did my homework after the fact, and I didn't walk away impressed, if I'm being totally honest. Like, I thought he was fine. I definitely think there's upside there. He's a really athletic guard. But this is a little earlier than I would have taken him. I probably would have been looking more towards like the mid to late 5th round, maybe even early 6th round. But this is fine. You know, I get it. It's good process. You're in the 4th round. You're just looking for an athletic lineman. I get it. So I can't hate the pick. Maybe he competes for a starting job day one, given how bad their depth at guard is. So if that's the case, then it's going to look even better. But as a whole, I'm going to give this a B-. I just don't love the pick. It's not a bad pick by any means. It's just kind of meh for me. You know, it's not something that I'm super impressed with, especially when you consider their first 4 picks. Goodness gracious. It's just not one that does a lot for me. So then we move on to the 5th round, and the Cardinals selected a quarterback, taking Clayton Tune out of Houston, and this is a pick that I thought was solid. Obviously, Kyler Murray isn't going to play like the first half of the year, so you're kind of trying to figure out who your quarterback's going to be while he recovers. If he even plays this year, maybe there's a world where the Cardinals are really bad and they just sit him for the whole year. I definitely wouldn't say that's out of the realm of possibility. So you look at Clayton Tune, and for me, he was QB 10, 5th round grade. They took him in the 5th round, so good value there. He's just the type of guy that screams reliable career backup. You know, he's a good leader. He's not somebody that's going to take a ton of risks. He's pretty safe with the football. He's got a quick release. He can move a little bit. He can navigate pressure pretty well. He's got a lot of experience. I think played 4 or 5 seasons in college. It's just, I don't love his post-snap processor, and his mechanics are a little sloppy, but, you know, just as a backup, as a guy that you want to step in, he's fine. He's fine. He reminds me of Jeff Driscoll. If I'm being totally honest, that's kind of the projection I see for him, but better. He's like a better Jeff Driscoll. So I'm sure there's a better comparison out there. It's just, him and Driscoll were very similar. So yeah, this is a fine pick. Not one that blows me away, but it's a good pick. Good process, 5th round, just taking a quarterback. He could be your week 1 starter, because what are your other options? Like Colt McCoy? Yikes. So I'm going to give this pick a B. You know, again, not a superstar, not somebody that I think is like a long-term super impactful player for you, but if he's your day one starter this year, just because Kyler's hurt and can be a consistent backup, then this is perfectly fine. And then also in the 5th round, with their second 5th round pick 168, they took Owen Papo. I believe that's how you say his last name. If it's not apparent, I'm terrible with last names. So please excuse me if I mispronounced it. But yeah, Owen Papo out of Auburn, linebacker. And this is fine process. For me, he was linebacker 11, had a 5th round grade on him, so right about where I would have taken him. And he's just a high upside linebacker with really good athletic tools. He's fast, he's disciplined, he's got long arms, but his instincts and play recognition leave a lot to be desired. He's the type of guy that, you're really banking on these traits. You're really, really banking on these traits. And in the 5th round, that's perfectly fine process. There's nothing wrong with that. But he kind of has to learn how to play the linebacker position, it almost feels like. So I would say right away he's probably going to be an impact special teamer, which works. He's the type of guy that likes to run downfield and hit. So let him do that. Let him cook. Maybe one day down the line he can find a way into that linebacker room. Maybe he can be solid depth just because of those athletic tools. But as of right now, there's a lot of work to be done. So just grading off the process and the fact that he has a high upside, I'm going to give this pick a B as well. Definitely not the worst pick in the world. Again, this is where I probably would have taken him just about, so perfectly fine with this pick. Moving on to the 6th round, the Arizona Cardinals selected cornerback Kytrell Clark out of Louisville with their first of 2 picks. And this is another move that I really like for Arizona. Clark was my cornerback 16. I had a late 4th, early 5th round grade on him. And I think overall this is really good value. Like I said, given where I would have drafted him, getting him in the 6th round is good value. He's just a really technically sound and smart corner. He's pretty athletic as well. He's sticky in man coverage. He's twitchy. He's fluid. He's just small. That's the big thing. He's not the biggest guy in the world, and I don't think he's a slot guy necessarily. Like, he can probably play in the slot. He's going to need a little bit more work, but I think his best role is suited as an outside corner opposite Garrett Williams. And like I said, with him being so small, that might be questionable, but he played a similar role to Williams in college, and that's the defense they're going to be playing in. So those two as your outside corners make a lot of sense. And we've seen a trend in recent years with guys like DJ Reed, Darius Williams, Duke Shelley, etc., with similar, smaller, leaner builds that play this off-zone coverage role where they're not asked to get up in a receiver's face and try to play physical with them. They just sit back, read, and react. And that is the perfect role for Clark. And because of that, I could see him starting day one opposite Garrett Williams. The Cardinals could realistically start 2 rookie corners that were drafted after day one, week 1 in the NFL this year. And I think that's incredible for them. Clark and Williams, both very good players. If they start them week 1, I think that would be a great idea. So because of that, with the Clark pick, I'm going to give this a B+. Not quite an A. This isn't like a home run, blew my mind type of pick, but it's really damn good. Good value, good player, fits the scheme well. You know what? I just talked myself into an A. There's really no reason not to give this an A. We're going to change it on the fly. I'm going to give this pick an A. I guess the A+ would be if it absolutely blew me away, right? So, great scheme fit, great player, great guy. I've heard really good things about his character, and he can start day one. Getting that in the 6th round is fantastic. So I'm going to give this pick an A. That's the final verdict. We're not going to switch it again. It's an A. And then with their final pick in the draft, their other 6th round pick, they selected defensive lineman Dante Stills. And Stills is somebody that I didn't quite like as much as a guy like Clark, but this is good value. I had a late round 6, early round 7 grade on him. That's about where they took him here. He's a hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle type of guy. Very similar to like Adetomiwa Adebawore, right? Not the same type of player by any means in terms of what they're good at. This isn't some super freak athlete or anything. But he plays similar to Adebawore and projects in a similar role, which is where you would play him on the edge on early downs so he can defend the run, and then on later downs you kick him inside to defensive tackle and let him overpower interior offensive linemen on passing downs. And I like that a lot for him. I think this is a really good fit for him. And he can play anywhere from 3 tech to 5 tech, and he's a rotational defensive lineman. So Stills isn't a player I love. Like I said, I think he's fine. But for their defense, for what they're trying to do, for the depth they have, this is a good pick. In the 6th round, can't complain here. I'm going to give this one a B. Like I said, this isn't a pick that blew me away, but good value, good process, good scheme fit, all that good stuff. Makes a lot of sense. As a whole, I love what the Cardinals did here. You're walking away with a lot of guys that I was a big fan of, like Johnson and Ojulari and Wilson and Clark, as well as some other guys that can be impactful not only long-term, but maybe even day one because of how depleted this roster is. Monty Ossenfort knocked it out of the park this year. You know, as his first year as the GM, you get rid of the old GM, I can't remember his name for the life of me, you get rid of Cliff Kingsbury, you get those 2 buffoons out of Arizona, and you replace them with a GM that clearly knows what he's doing, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This is the type of draft class that 2-3 years down the line, you look back at it and you're like, you know what? This is where things change. This is what turned the tide. This is where we finally made that adjustment that made us into a serious football team. And because of that, and the draft trade that they made that's probably going to net them a top 5, at the very least top 10 pick next year, I'm going to give this an A+. If they didn't make that trade with Houston, this would probably still be an A. In fact, I know for a fact it would still be an A, but that trade really pushes this team over the hump, really puts them in that A+ territory and gives them what will probably be one of the 5 highest graded drafts that I evaluate, right? One of the 5 highest draft grades I hand out. Absolutely love what Arizona did here, and spoiler alert, no other team in this division is going to get an A+. This was the best draft by any team in this division by far, in my opinion. Absolutely love it. Moving on to the Los Angeles Rams, we have 14 draft picks to sit here and talk about and grade. That's 3 picks. Yep, 3 picks on day 2, 11 picks on day 3, none in the first round. So let's just go ahead, quit stalling, and dive into this, starting out with Steve Avila out of TCU, the interior offensive lineman. I like this pick quite a bit for the Rams. I had a 2nd round grade on Avila. He was the 6th rated interior offensive lineman for me. And I've seen quite a few people say that this was a bit of an overdraft, being 5 picks into the 2nd round. And while I do agree, for most teams that I probably wouldn't have taken him this high, for the Rams it makes a ton of sense. Interior offensive line really needs help. And Avila at this point was probably the best pass-blocking interior offensive lineman, at least for a wide zone offense. He's very athletic, he moves very well in space, that's going to be huge for their run game, although he does have some room to improve there. He definitely needs to improve as a run blocker, but as a pass blocker, he's one of the better guys in the class. He's got good balance, he absorbs contact well, he's just your ideal pass-blocking interior offensive lineman. Plus, he has experience at both guard and center, so he can, there's 3 different spots in the interior of your line that he could potentially play for you, so this is a guy that is going to be a starter at some point. Maybe not a superstar long-term, I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar, but I do think he'll be a quality starter long-term. I do think this is a guy that, for a good while, will be a quality piece of your offensive line, so I'm going to give this a B+. Like I said, not the perfect pick, but one that definitely makes sense, one that's definitely going to help right away, and somebody that can be a solid piece for you for a good while. And then we move on to the 3rd round, where they made 2 picks, both on the defensive line, starting out with Byron Young out of Tennessee. There's 2 of these guys in this class, believe it or not, one from Alabama, one from Tennessee. This is the Tennessee one, who is more of an edge rusher. And he was edge 14 for me, had a 3rd round grade on him. I really like this edge class, so being in the top 20 for edges in this class is pretty good from me. So this is a good value pick. Like I said, had a 3rd round grade on him, taking him in the 3rd round makes sense. Was at a position of need. Their edge rushers are hurting right now. And because of that, he can potentially start right away. Now, he is a 25-year-old rookie, which is not ideal, but he has absurd athletic traits. He's got a really good first step. His bend is great. He's got the ability to really step up on stunts, especially as a finisher. And, with the run that happened on edge rushers around this point, this was probably the best guy they could have taken. Now, I will say he needs some help as a run defender. He's going to be more of like a weak side run defender because he's not the strongest dude in the world. He's a little bit on the smaller side. His arms are a little bit shorter, so there's definitely something left to be desired there. But as a pass rusher, like I said, really good athlete, a lot of upside there. And it's not like he's technically deficient, right? He needs a little bit of refinement, but it's the Rams defensive line. I have no doubt in my mind that he will turn into at least a quality starter for them, like an edge 2 type guy. So this is a good pick. I'm going to give this a B+. Like I said, at this point, he was probably the best edge they could have taken. So I definitely can't complain here. With their other third-round pick, the Rams took the conductor, one of my favorite players in this entire class, Mr. Kobe Turner, the defensive lineman out of Wake Forest. And the reason I like him so much, number one, he's really fun to watch. And number two, he's got a music background. He's real big into music. He committed to college for choir or chorus, whatever it would be at his university. So I'm somebody that in middle school did chorus and choir, and high school did chorus, choir, show choir, and musical theater, so we're cut from the same cloth, right? We love the arts, we love music, we love football. He's me, right? We're the same, except he's bigger than I am and a lot more athletic and a lot better at football and also getting paid a lot of money to play football, and I'm not. But yeah, I love Kobe Turner. He's awesome. He was my interior defense, like my 6th graded interior defensive lineman, late 2nd, early 3rd round grade. You get him here in the middle of the 3rd round, I want to say pick 89 is. I could be wrong. It's somewhere around there. So good value. He's a guy with a high floor, great technique, really good football IQ. He's super instinctive. He's quick. He's explosive. He's got good power in his hands. Really hot motor. He's a guy that just gets at it, which I absolutely love. Really good get off. He has a good understanding of leverage, but he's undersized. And I know what you're thinking. He's not Aaron Donald, okay? He's awesome. I love Kobe Turner. He's not Aaron Donald. I know there's going to be some Rams fans out there that are like, this is the guy. This is his successor. It's not. It's going to be someone that can play alongside Aaron Donald and cook and be, a backup for Aaron Donald and maybe step into that role one day, but he's never going to be as good as Aaron Donald, okay? Let's just get that out of the way. But that being said, I love him. He's a little bit inconsistent. He needs some work. He's going to be learning under Aaron Donald, which is going to be huge for that. So this was not only like a fantastic landing spot for Turner, but he's a fantastic player. I love him. So I'm going to give this pick an A. Not quite an A+, because this isn't like you're getting him in the 5th round or something, but definitely an A. Really like Turner. Really like this fit. Just a perfect spot, perfect player for the Rams here. And then we move on to the 4th round, and the Rams did it. They took Stetson Bennett. They were the team that took the quirked-up white boy out of Georgia, and I like it. For the Rams, I think this is a good pick. Now, I will say it's a little bit earlier than I would have taken him. Bennett was QB9 for me, had a 5th round grade on him, but I get it. He's going to be a good backup quarterback, fits the system well. He worked in a similar system to what they're going to be running in LA at Georgia. He's tough. He's poised in the pocket, good football IQ, natural leader, sees the field pretty well, quick release, he's accurate. I'm going to throw this out here, and you can call me crazy for it if you want. If any rookie from this class is going to be Brock Purdy, in the sense that he way overachieves relative to his talent, it's going to be Stetson Bennett. Granted, he doesn't have the superstar cast that Purdy does. He doesn't have Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey and Juszczyk and whoever else, right? He doesn't have all that. But he's got Cooper Kupp. He's got a solid run game. And he's got Sean McVay. So that's good enough for me. He's got McVay and he's got Cooper Kupp. There's some other guys in there I'm forgetting the names of. He's got Ben Skoranek, who kind of plays fullback. So, he's got something there. I don't think this is like, Purdy in the sense that he goes all the way to the NFC Championship game, but if he has to step in, with Stafford's arm being in a wonky place, he'll probably win more games than you'd expect, is kind of what I'm getting at. He's going to succeed above his talent levels, win more games than you'd expect, and get some weird narratives pushed about him, right? That's what I mean when I say he would be this year's Brock Purdy if there is one. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but again, if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Stetson. So, not necessarily taking that into account, but just looking at him as a backup quarterback that knows this type of system already, this is a B+. Would be an A if they took him in the 5th or 6th round, but because it's in the 4th round, at the end of the day, Stetson's still an older quarterback, that is small. And, you know, he's got a swagger that he's going to bring to the locker room that's going to be infectious, but that also kind of comes at the cost of him maybe being a douchebag. So, you know, pros and cons to it. But yeah, I'm going to give this a B+. I like the pick for the Rams. This is another team probably wouldn't be as high, but for the Rams, I think this is a good spot. Then we move on to the 5th round, and with their first pick in the 5th round, they took edge Nick Hampton. And this is another pick I like. You know, not something that blows me away. He was edge 19 for me. 5th round grade, fits their system, so love all that. He's just the type of guy that's going to be a good rotational edge. He's an athletic freak that has good upside. Don't think he's ever going to be like an alpha or anything, but in the 5th round, you're not looking for that. You're just looking for depth, right? You're looking for a guy that can have some sort of impact, right? He's got a really good first step. He has a good arsenal of pass rushing moves. He uses his hands well. He's fluid. He's bendy. He's got good burst. He's just not a good run defender, and because he's a little bit smaller, not the strongest guy in the world either. But again, in the 5th round, guy with upside, good depth. I like it. Gonna give this a B. Like I said, just a quality pickup here in the 5th round. Nothing crazy, but it's a good pick. And then we move on to the first pick the Rams made that I really don't like, and that is going to be Warren McClendon, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. For me, he was OT 15, which would make him the lowest graded tackle out of the guys I watched. I want to say I had a 7th round grade on him. Maybe he has more upside as a guard, which is definitely possible, but he was getting benched towards the end of the year last year for a freshman. They were rotating him in and out, which definitely doesn't help with his draft stock, so I don't have a whole lot to say here. He's just fine. You know, maybe there's some upside there, maybe there's not. Who knows? Depth guy, probably, for his career. I'm going to give this a C. Nothing great, nothing bad, just kind of mid, if I'm being totally honest. Don't like the pick. I think this is early for him, but, you know, it could have been worse, right? With their next 5th round pick, the Rams selected tight end Davis Allen out of Clemson, and I love this pick because Davis Allen was one of my guys. He was one of my favorite players in this class. He was my tight end 8, had a 4th round grade on him, so you're getting him here in the 5th round, and not only in the 5th round, but all the way at pick 175. It's a great value pick for sure. He's very technically sound. Not the best athlete in the world, but he's a fantastic run blocker. And as a run blocker, he's got great technique. There's a lot of effort there. He just wants to get up and hit guys as a run blocker, which obviously I love as an old school fan of football, despite only being 20. And he had a 90 or 91% contested catch rate. It was at least 90. His contested catch rate in college, which is absurd. He's the type of guy that's just big, and he's going to go up for the ball, he's going to box you out, he's got big hands, he's got a really wide wingspan. He just screams consistent tight end 2. He's just the type of guy that's going to be super reliable as a tight end 2. And I think that's fantastic for the Rams, getting that here in the 5th round, especially when you consider some of the guys that went ahead of him, like Brenton Strange and Luke Schoonmaker. He's better than them, or at least I thought he was better than them. So getting him here in the 5th round is awesome value, awesome player, gonna help out the run game a lot this year. So I'm gonna give this an A. Absolutely love Davis Allen. I think this is a fantastic fit for him in LA. And with their final 5th round pick, the Rams took wide receiver Puka Nacua out of BYU. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is another A. I love Puka. Back-to-back A picks here in the 5th round is huge. He was wide receiver 16 for me. I had a 4th round grade on him, so getting him here towards the end of the 5th round is pretty good value. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, so that kind of explains his slide, why he was taken so late. But he's a great route runner, high IQ, very technically refined, good body control, really good after the catch, zero fear of contact. This dude is not afraid to, hit somebody or take a hit. Really good ball security, especially when he's in the air. It's hard to knock the ball loose from him if you're going to hit him in the air. His 40 time was pretty weak, but he's faster on tape than that suggests. So if he is able to stay healthy, if he's able to recover from this injury quickly, he's somebody that could find playing time pretty quickly. We know that Sean McVay likes his, kind of sneaky athletic receivers is the best way to put it. And Puka's that. He's that to a T. He's a sneaky athletic, very high IQ, smart, savvy route runner type. He fits perfectly with what the Rams like, especially with like how kind of sneaky bad their wide receiver room is. Like, obviously they have Cooper Kupp, but after that there's quite the fall off. So I love this pick for them. I'm a little surprised they didn't go wide receiver earlier, but getting Puka here in the 5th round makes up for it. So like I said, this is another A pick, and that's back-to-back A's in the 5th round, which is pretty damn good. Moving into the 6th round, the first pick the Rams made was cornerback Travius Hodges-Tomlinson out of TCU. And I don't think this is like a crazy steal like a lot of people thought. I wasn't a huge fan of Tomlinson. Like, I would have taken him before this. I had a late 4th, early 5th round grade on him. He was cornerback 18, I want to say, on my big board, but God, he's a small fella. He's just a little guy, you know? I think he's like 5'7", and on top of that, because he's so small, he's very, very grabby. He had like 14 penalties last year, which is an average of 1 a game, which is bad. And he's grabby like that because of how small he is. He knows he can't hang, so he's just kind of hanging on for dear life. But as a backup, as a depth corner, he's fine. He's got like boomer bust upside. And we've seen small corners work in this system before. Look no further than Darius Williams. So there's, kind of like I was talking about earlier with Kytrell Clark and Garrett Williams. It's the same type of guy, right? So, as a boundary corner that's going to be playing off coverage, maybe there's a little bit of potential for him in this system. Now, I don't think he's somebody that's going to play in the slot because he lacks the size and the consistency when it comes to tackling and just the physicality to really do that. But this is kind of like the best landing spot for him, if I'm being totally honest. Like, I don't love THT, but if I was going to pick where I would need him to go for me to see a world where he succeeds, it definitely would have been the Rams, or at least a similar system. So I'm going to give this a B. Like I said, a little bit later than I would have drafted him, so good value and he fits well. But I think he can be a fine backup here at the very least. And then we move on to their next 6th round pick, and it's the edge rusher O'Shawn Mathis. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know a ton about this guy. Did not watch him prior to the draft, and after the draft, I didn't get a whole lot of tape in. But just looking at my notes here real quick, he's just a developmental guy. Good length, but he's on the older side, and he really needs to just figure out what he's doing. He looks a little lost out there from what I saw, so again, he's somebody that needs to work out the kinks, but because he's older, you don't love a pick like this quite as much. So I'm just going to give this a C. Like, I don't have a super strong opinion about it. It's whatever. It's the 6th round. You're just trying to find a guy, but Mathis is not somebody that really showed me anything that I'm super impressed by. With their next 6th round pick, they did the best thing any team in this draft could have done, and that's take a running back, because good lord, this was a fantastic running back, and Zach Evans is no exception. I definitely liked him quite a bit. He was RB11 for me, which again, pretty high praise. I had a 4th round grade on him, so getting him in the 6th round is good value. He's a fantastic scheme fit, the ideal type of guy for this wide zone rushing offense. He tested pretty well. The only issue with him is he's not much of anything on passing downs. His pass blocking's pretty rough. His hands aren't that great. He's not a good route runner. But he's physical. He has good contact balance. He has good vision, which is the biggest thing for me. I want my running back to, be able to take a hit, and I want him to see the field well. And Zach Evans does both of those things. He can cut on a dime. He's pretty explosive, has good natural burst. He's able to make guys miss in space pretty well. So he's just a really good, RB2 in a committee, right? And that's kind of what he's going to be. He's here in this running back room with Cam Akers, and I'm sure there's somebody else I'm forgetting. I'll probably flash their name on the screen and call myself an idiot for not remembering. So I like this pick quite a lot. Like I said, in the 6th round, taking the 11th best running back in the class, in my opinion, a guy that's just good for your offense. Good value, good player. Gonna give this a B+. Definitely like this pick for the Rams quite a bit. And then we move on to Ethan White here, and it's a punter. Punter, 7th round, sure. I don't have a lot of thoughts on any of the kickers or punters in this class because kickers and punters are really hard to evaluate and are probably the most boom or bust players in the sense of where they can land. And I'll get into more of that when we talk about the Niners for obvious reasons. But Ethan White's fine. You needed a punter. Yeah, Ethan White. I almost thought I had his name wrong. I will say I hate that he's going to be wearing the number 42 in the NFL. I know that's normal for college, but not in my National Football League. Icky, ucky, no, get off the field. Yeah, like, I hope you enjoyed the punter highlights I threw in here. Hopefully, if I didn't, I'm going to sound like a moron here. But I'm going to give this a B. Like, sure, you're taking a punter in the 7th round, you needed one, I get it. He's never going to be Johnny Hekker, probably, hopefully. I hope that's not something that gets thrown in like a TikTok edit 4 years down the line when he's an all-pro punter, and it's just like me going, he's never going to be Johnny Hekker, and then it's like crazy trap music and him hitting absolute bombs. But yeah, punter, cool. And then with their next 7th round pick, they selected safety Jason Taylor II, and this is a pick we can actually talk about, a pick that I actually like quite a bit. He was safety 17 for me, had a 6th round grade on him, so getting him here in the 7th is pretty solid. And this safety class was kind of butt cheeks. I don't think that's like news to anybody. It wasn't very good, but Jason Taylor was a guy that I liked. He's got good range as a true like deep safety. He's a good playmaker. He's aggressive. And he's probably somebody that you're going to want to bring a little bit closer to the box in the NFL and let him take advantage of that aggression and that playmaking ability and just kind of trigger to the ball, right? And that's really good for what he's going to be able to do. But I will say, one thing that I really don't like about Jason Taylor is his run defense. He needs to improve because if I'm being totally honest, I'm going to be completely blunt here, he did not give a fuck about the run in college. He could not be bothered to play run defense. Like, I talk about Eddie Jackson making business decisions quite often at the NFL level. If you follow me, you know I do not like Eddie Jackson. Jason Taylor does not make business decisions. It's almost like he's not there. It's like you've got 10 men on the field anytime they run the ball, because he'll jog, he'll kind of look the other way. Like, he does not give a flying fuck about the run. So that's not great. That's definitely not ideal. It's definitely not good. But I can see a world where maybe you can coach a little bit of that into him. I know you can't teach heart, but if he really wants it, maybe he'll realize once he's in the NFL, you can't get away with just playing coverage. But until that gets improved, I'm giving him a C+, because a safety that cannot defend the run belongs in the island of misfit toys, not on a football field. And I know free safety, coverage, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Okay, if you're not a lockdown corner like Deion Sanders or something and you're playing on defense, you need to be able to play the run. Point blank, period. I don't care. You need to at least put in effort. I'm not asking you to be Troy Polamalu. I'm not asking you to be Talanoa Hufanga or Derwin James or Harrison Smith and come up and lay somebody out or make a crazy tackle behind the line of scrimmage. I just want effort, and there was none of that from Jason Taylor. And then finally, in the 7th round, they took Desjuan Johnson, another defensive lineman. I had him listed as an edge rusher, but he's actually going to be more of a hybrid guy. Might play a little bit of defensive, like interior defensive line, a little bit of edge, different possibilities there. He was edge 34 for me, which gave him a 7th round grade. So this is about where I would have taken him. He was productive in college, like I said, bit of a hybrid edge. This is just a dart throw on a guy with athletic upside. In the 7th round, that's what you do, right? Good process there. He's fluid, he's quick, he's slippery, good bend, high motor, really gets after it, understands leverage pretty well. He's a smaller guy, he lacks the length you want, he has no pass rushing tool belt, his hand usage is pretty subpar. But, you know, if you're going to kick him inside, he's able to cook against interior offensive linemen, goodness gracious. He's able to cook against them because he's a lot quicker than them. He's just kind of a guy that you're going to use on very specific types of plays and types of schemes and types of packages. So, in the 7th round, that's fine. I'm going to give this pick a B. Not one I can complain about, not one I can say anything negative or super crazy about. It's a fine pick. So as a whole, I like what the Rams did. They walked away with quite a few guys that I was pretty high on, guys like Puka and Allen and Kobe Turner. But I will say I'm a little bit surprised they didn't target wide receiver a little bit earlier. I'm surprised they didn't go after a linebacker or even target a guy like Keely Ringo, who, could play corner for them, could have played safety, whatever. But, I'm not going to knock them too hard for not drafting somebody, right? So I'm going to give this draft a B+. I think the Rams did fine. It didn't blow me away, but I think they did fine. And they got quite a few guys that I'm a pretty big fan of, so definitely a solid draft by the Rams this year. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, I want to be upfront in saying that out of the 4 teams in this division, they're definitely my favorite. I love the 49ers because of Kyle Shanahan and Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle and all those guys. But I can tell you right now, I don't get it. I don't know what they did in this draft class. Like, I look at this class and all I can think is, what are they cooking? What is their plan? What do they know? What am I missing that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilkes and anyone else involved in this process knows? Because clearly I'm missing something, or they just had the worst draft in the NFL. This was abysmal. Like, to their credit, they didn't have a first or a second round pick. So that definitely hurts. It definitely means that your third and apparently fifth round picks are going to be judged a little harsher, I suppose. But even then, goodness gracious, this class is not it. And I'm so sorry to 49ers fans if it feels like I'm being super negative, because we haven't even gotten started yet. So let's go ahead and just jump into things, starting out with Jair Brown here out of Penn State, the safety. And I will say, I have a soft spot for Brown. He was one of my favorite safeties in the class, not because he was one of the best safeties, I just thought he was fun. And he's got a connection to my boy Jaquan Brisker, so that's fun. But I like Brown's highlights. Like, if you look up Jair Brown highlights on YouTube, what you're going to be seeing here while I'm talking, they're fun. They're really fun. There's a lot of fun stuff happening here because he's a good playmaker. But as a whole, he was safety 10 for me, had a 4th to a 5th round grade on him, so you're taking him quite a bit early for my taste. Not only did you take one of the safeties in one of the weakest safety classes I can remember earlier than you probably should have, but you traded up for him. Like, I don't get it. Like I said, good highlight reel. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe maybe Lynch and Steve Wilkes were chilling one day, checking out some highlights on YouTube, and they're like, this guy, he's cooking, It's just, not only do I not think he's a great player, but the role he's going to play in the NFL is just Diet Talanoa Hufanga. So, like, I don't know. You can't have 2 guys like that on the field at once. That's not going to work. Because he's not somebody that's going to be super great on a down-to-down basis in coverage, so you need him playing up close to the box. And you can't have both of your safeties playing up close to the box, especially when you have a sick linebacker core. This isn't like the Chargers where they're just going to play safeties at linebacker. They don't need to do that because they have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and another linebacker they just got that we're going to talk about here in a minute that I think is better than Jair Brown as a player. Or maybe not as a player, but as a linebacker, at the very least. So it's tough. Like, I understand if you want him to be Hufanga's backup. You want a guy that's like Hufanga and can play his role. I totally get that. But why are you taking him in the 3rd round? Why is he your first pick in the draft? That's what makes me scratch my head. Like, looking at Brown as a player, right? He's an instinctive run defender. He's willing to take risks, but his coverage instincts are pretty bad. And, I guess that's kind of the big knock on him, is his coverage instincts are bad. But he's got a high motor. Love that. He's physical. He's tough. He triggers downhill well. Like I said, he's just Diet Talanoa Hufanga. And on top of that, there were other safeties on the board, guys like Chris Smith or Jordan Battle, that are a lot better in coverage, that could have played free safety for you if that's what you really wanted. And they complement Hufanga a lot better. Or, hell, you could have even taken Keely Ringo and played him at safety. I thought there was safety potential there, and he complements Hufanga a lot better. So I don't know. I just don't get it. I feel bad because I like Brown. I think he's fun. But I just think taking someone who's definitely going to be a backup and doesn't really have a lot of room to grow and potentially be a starter down the line in the third round, especially if it's your first pick in the draft and you're trading up, is a bad idea. So I'm going to give this pick a C. I don't get it. I really don't get what they're doing here. And then with their next pick, they committed one of the biggest sins you can commit in the draft. And that is taking a kicker on day 2. Now, I get it. You know, every team that drafts a kicker high, they're like, okay, but this one's different. Okay, but this one is an exception, right? And I get that. Maybe Jake Moody is. Maybe he is. Again, kickers are so hard to predict their trajectory in the NFL that, you know, maybe he can be. But I don't care. When it comes to taking a kicker this high, you gotta grade off process. And this is bad process. Like, I get it, they didn't have a kicker on the board, but they had 3 7th-round picks. You have undrafted free agents out there. Maybe they're not as good as Moody. I will admit Moody was my top kicker. But the 3rd round? Come on, man. I don't know. You could have taken an actual position of need that should be drafted before the 7th round. Like, Darnell freaking Washington was here. Imagine putting him in the same offense as George Kittle. You make Darnell Washington your inline tight end and let Kittle move around a little bit and get frisky. I know a lot of Niners fans last year were complaining that Kittle wasn't getting enough receptions early on in the season. So there's your solution to that. Or they could have gone 50 other different ways. But instead they take a kicker in the 3rd round. I'm sorry. This is getting a D for me. I just hate the process. And listen, I hope Jake Moody's awesome. I really do. Because he's a good kicker. He was a good kicker in college. But taking a kicker in the 3rd round is just a bad process. All day, every day. It's just not a good idea. Unless you know the guy is going to be Justin Tucker, which is impossible. It's not worth taking a kicker in the 3rd round. And then they follow that up by taking tight end Cameron Latu out of Alabama. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is another pick I really don't like from them. Latu for me was tight end 13, which would have landed him in about the 5th to 6th round for his grade. And this is just a major reach. He's a guy that's below average across the board. He doesn't do a single thing, like, good. He's not a good route runner, not dynamic after the catch. His hands are inconsistent. He has a slender lower half that really limits him as a blocker. When he's blocking, his hand placement's incredibly sloppy, and he has no ability to gain or maintain leverage. There's solid pop in his hands, but that's kind of it. He doesn't even have, like, upside. This isn't a guy that we're looking at like, oh, he's an athletic freak, he's just got to work on some stuff. He's not. He's a mediocre athlete, too. He's just like a tight end 3, I guess. I don't get it. Again, you're taking him in the 3rd round, and spoiler alert, you took a better tight end in the 7th round. I don't understand what John Lynch is doing here. I really don't. So I'm going to give this pick a D-. Like, this is really, really bad in my opinion. Not quite an F, but definitely a D-. This is really teetering on an F. Alright, I'm done being super negative for a little bit, because these next couple picks, I at least kind of like, or really like. Darrell Luter Jr., the cornerback that they took here in the 5th round, was probably their best pick of the draft. He's a guy that I didn't watch before the draft, but in a desperate heave to find something for the Niners draft class to be excited about, I checked him out right away. And I liked him. He's a good pick. He could definitely start at slot corner pretty early on. He's got long arms. He's got big hands. He's got smooth and fluid hips. He's willing to get up in your face and play physical. He's willing to come up and play the run. He's very technically sound, and he's a good overall athlete. This is a good pick. And this isn't a situation where you can play like those weird mental gymnastics that Lions fans are trying to do with their picks, where they landed a first-round talent in the second round and took second-round talents in the first round. You can switch it around. It's not like that. This is probably about where Luter should have gone in the 5th round. Like, this is good value. So, like I said, this was probably their best pick. I'm going to give it a B+. I like it. I hope he starts for them day one. I hope he can cook for them, because they need something out of this draft class to work out. And I think Luter, or someone we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, and D. Winters is probably the best bet there. With their next pick, also in the 5th round, they took Robert Beal Jr., who's going to play defensive end for them. He's an edge rusher. And this pick's okay. He was edge 38 for me on my big board, which would have landed him as a 7th round talent. So it's a reach, but I get it, because of how good his upside is. He's a fast pass rusher. He's got crazy wingspan. His wingspan is nearly 7 feet long. He can come in on early downs and really cook as a run defender and as a stunt guy. He only had 20 total starts at Georgia, which is a bit concerning. And he's not the best tackler in the world, so I'm not enamored by him. Like I said, I like a defensive lineman that can tackle and finish plays and play the run. But the athletic upside is there, and tackling is something you can teach. You know, the effort, it's not like it's a lack of effort thing, it's just I don't love his form, and his angles are pretty inconsistent. So if you can teach him that, you can fix that up, which I'm confident San Francisco's defensive group can. Then he can be a solid rotational pass rusher, and or a solid rotational defensive lineman, edge rusher, pass rusher, whatever you want to call him. So because of the reach, I'm going to give this a C+. But just know it's a high C+. It's a C+ to where it's justifiable. It's just, like I said, I had a 7th round grade on them. I can't give them anything higher than that for taking them 2 rounds early. Then with their only 6th round pick, they took a linebacker, D. Winters, and this was a perfect fit for the 49ers. This is the exact team that Winters needed to go to. This is the perfect scheme fit. He's the perfect archetype of linebacker they need, and they're getting pretty good value out of him. For me, he was LB 13, which would have landed him as a 5th round talent. Getting him in the 6th round is good value there. He's a freaky athlete. He's overall just like your ideal developmental off-ball linebacker, right? He needs to learn his run keys. He needs to kind of learn what he's doing in coverage, but he's the type of guy that loves to run and hit people, so he's going to be an awesome special teamer right away. He's super instinctive. He's got really good range. He's got good short area quickness. He's fast. He accelerates really well. He is good in man coverage. You know, he's going to stick to his guy, and he's really good at blitzing because of his speed and his ability to shed blocks. If you send him at the quarterback, he's going to get there pretty efficiently. Overall, like, his size and his athletic profile remind me a lot of Dre Greenlaw, who just got extended and is obviously hooping for the 49ers right now. But, you know, let's say 3-4 years down the line, they want a cheaper option at linebacker. If D. Winters develops the way that he potentially can with this coaching staff, then he could step into that role and probably won't be as good as Dre Greenlaw, but can do a similar thing. He can play a similar role. So it's a really good pick here. This is the best team in the league at developing off-ball linebackers. So you get the ideal developmental linebacker and put him on this team that's really good at doing so. And that's fantastic. I'm going to give this a B+ as well. It would be an A, but like I said, he has a long ways to go with his development, so I'm not quite ready to say he's like a home run pick or anything. But this is the perfect fit, the perfect team, the perfect type of guy to take in the 6th round. So we're going to give this a very, very high B+. Then we move on to the 7th round, and I'm going to keep it quick for all 3 of these guys, starting out with Braden Willis, the tight end, who, like I said, better than the tight end they took in the 3rd round. He's the type of guy that is just a really good move blocker. He loves to get down and dirty and run block, and obviously the Niners love their guys like this. He's not somebody I watched before the draft, but doing my homework after the fact, I definitely liked him. And he fits very, very well as the tight end, too, behind Kittle. I'm not saying that's going to be his role right away, but he projects as somebody that can definitely do that as your blocking tight end. So, good pick here, good value in the 7th round. Going to give this one a B. Again, blows my mind that they got a better tight end than Latu in the 7th round. That's crazy that they decided to double up on tight end, and that's how that worked out. And then we move on to their second 7th round pick, and they took wide receiver Ronnie Bell, who I also did not watch much of before the draft. I'm going to tell you right now, same thing with Jalen Graham before we get to him. But focusing on Ronnie Bell here, he's a good athlete. He just needs to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he's someone that fits in their system very well, and because he's fast and he's good on crossing routes, he can make an impact as like a 4th or 5th receiver. This is good process, getting an athletic linebacker or an athletic receiver, with good upside. But he's not a great route runner, not a great contested catcher. He's just somebody that if you put him on a simple route, he's going to create that separation. He's going to get open if you give him a free release. And then you just hit him and let him do his thing after the catch. So I'm going to give this a B. Again, fine process, good fit, type of guy that you want to see in this type of offense. And then finally, in the 7th round, they took another developmental linebacker, this time being Jalen Graham, who is actually a converted safety. And again, this is a fine pick. He's fast, going to be a good special teamer. Again, just a good process, by the 49ers. A lot of that on day 3, just none of it on day 2. So I'm going to give this one a B as well. Just another pick that I like the upside, I like the process, solid player, solid fit, all that good stuff. So yeah, as a whole, the Niners draft was really saved by their day 3 picks. Guys like Winters and Graham and Willis and Bell and Luter especially. They were really saved by these day 3 picks because their 3 third-round picks were atrocious. So as a whole, I'm going to give them a C-, and I can all but guarantee this is going to be the lowest grade I give to any of the teams this year. Maybe someone else grades out lower, but this draft class is just so disappointing. Granted, it's the 49ers. They didn't need a whole lot of help, but they really had a lot of missed opportunities and just didn't walk away with a lot of players that I'm especially confident in. And I don't think I'm the only person with that opinion, so I feel like I can say pretty confidently they had a pretty bad draft. And finally, with the Seattle Seahawks, this is going to be a hell of a lot more positive because I really like what Seattle did this year. I will say I'm a little surprised that they didn't take an interior offensive lineman early, and we'll get into that here as we move down the board. But just starting things out with Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois, their first pick, taking him in the top 5, definitely caught me by surprise. Not the route I expected them to go at 5, but I probably should have, because this is the perfect fit for Pete Carroll's defense. He was CB2 for me, top 15 player in the class, super instinctive guy, fantastic reaction time, super sticky in man coverage. He's fluid, he's agile, he changes directions very well, he's got good ball skills, he's really good in press coverage. My favorite aspect of his play is the fact that he's willing to come up and make a play against the run. He's not afraid to hit somebody. He's not afraid to get down and dirty in the run game. He's physically tough. He's an incredible tackler by corner standards, and he can play inside and outside. So perfect fit for Seattle's defense. Love Witherspoon. He was one of my favorite players in the class. Would have easily been CB1 if not for Mr. Christian Gonzalez. So yeah, I'm going to give this pick an A. Like I said, love the fit, love the player, just all around great for Seattle. And then with their second first-round pick, they surprised me again and took wide receiver Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State. And the reason this surprised me is because I really thought they were going to go interior defensive line here, but they didn't, and I'm perfectly okay with that because JSN was my top receiver on the board. Once again, top 15 talent in this class for me. And he fits so well with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. He's a true slot receiver that is just open. He is always open, and that's awesome for the Seahawks offense. You've got DK as your 50-50 guy, your true X. You've got Lockett as just a deep threat that, is always going to get open downfield, tracks the ball really well. And then JSN is going to cook in the short to intermediate range, just always be open, find the soft spot in the zone, and be super, super reliable for Geno Smith. And because of that, he's probably going to be pretty damn productive. Maybe we're talking about a Rookie of the Year candidate. Just love JSN. Super high floor, great mismatch against slot corners and safeties and linebackers. Great footwork, his feet are really quick, super high football IQ. Like I said, he's really reliable, so he's got those reliable hands. He's another receiver, much like Michael Wilson, that is willing to get down and dirty in the run game. He's willing to run block. He's a smooth route runner, really smooth mover in general. His short area quickness and 0 to 60 acceleration are both elite. He's great after the catch, really good body control. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but as a true slot, that doesn't matter, and maybe his health might be a concern. It's not something I'm worrying about too much. So just as a whole, he is everything you want in a slot wide receiver. So again, gonna give this an A. Fantastic pick by Seattle, absolutely knocked the first round out of the park. Then we get to the second round, and they took edge rusher Derek Hall out of Auburn pretty early on at pick 37 here. For me, Derek Hall was edge 11, which would have given him a late second, early third round grade, so a little bit earlier than I would have taken him, but I see the vision. I really like Derek Hall. He's a day one impact player. He's going to be a starter as an edge rusher. He's never going to be like an alpha. He's never going to be that guy like we talked about earlier with BJ Ojulari, but he could be a damn good Robin to somebody's Batman, and that's kind of what the Seahawks need, is that Batman type of guy. He's a good pocket pusher, really good combo moves, good length, quick first step. He's fast as a whole, like his foot speed. He ran a 4.55 40. He's got really good raw power, especially in his hands. He sets a really strong edge against the run. His hand usage is really good. He's explosive, really good pursuit angles, high motor. The only issues I have with him is he's not the bendiest guy in the world, but his power makes up for it, and he needs to improve as a tackler. Now, he's not a bad tackler. He's not a bad finisher by any means. I just think there's a little room for improvement. That's all it is. Just a little bit of room for improvement. And I think that's something that will just come naturally with playing at the next level and playing under Pete Carroll. So as a whole, I'm going to give this a B+. Love the pick. Not quite an A, because like I said, it's a little earlier than I would have taken him, but I think this is a great fit for Seattle, somebody that's going to be an impact starter day one. And speaking of great fits, their next pick, also in the second round, was running back Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. And I won't lie, this is another pick that caught me by surprise. Obviously, with how great Kenneth Walker was, to take a running back in the second round was unexpected, especially when they hadn't taken an interior offensive line. And I've got a list of guys here that, I could have seen them taking here over Charbonnet, guys like Osiris Torrance, John Michael Schmidt, Steve Avila, Matthew Bergeron, Joe Tippmann. Obviously, Steve Avila was actually off the board at this point, but either way, all those other names, I'm really surprised they didn't target over Charbonnet, but hey, not going to complain here, because I loved Zach Charbonnet. He was RB4 for me, had a true second round grade on him, and as an RB2, the Thunder to Kenneth Walker's Lightning, perfect fit. Super reliable, classic one-cut back, really good vision. Like I said, that's my favorite trait in a running back. He's physical, got great contact balance, secures the ball well, accelerates well. He's very patient behind the line of scrimmage. He's got a good route tree as a pass catcher. It's just he's not super shifty, and as a pass blocker, he's not the best guy in the world, but hey, it is what it is. You're not asking this guy to come in and be Travis Homer. You want him to be your RB2, and he can absolutely do that. Love the pick. Like I said, because of some of those linemen they didn't take, I'm not going to give this an A, but I will give it a B+, because if they weren't going to take a lineman, this is probably the best guy they could have gone with. Love Charbonnet, love the fit, and like I said, him and Ken Walker are going to be such a fun tandem in their backfield. Then we move on to the fourth round, and they took offensive lineman Anthony Bradford, and if I'm being totally honest, I do not like this pick. This is the only pick for the Seahawks that I outright did not like. Bradford was he was the 16th ranked interior offensive lineman for me, had a 7th round grade on him. Just a really big reach and kind of a reminder of some of the guys they missed out on. He's a mauling bruiser type of guy with clunky feet, bad pass blocker. He's like a poor man's Osiris Torrance, is essentially what I see in him. He's not a guy that's going to start right away, probably not in his first year. And hell, if you wanted a developmental offensive lineman, there were other guys available that were better. Chandler Zavala being a big example. I love Zavala. And also Antonio Mafi. Both guys that are similar project offensive linemen that I just thought were better. So because of that, I'm going to give this a D. And Seahawks fans, I'm sorry, but just know this is the lowest grade you're going to get, because the rest of this draft class, I liked decently. With their other 4th round pick, I think they also reached a little bit, and that's going to be Cameron Young, a defensive tackle. He was interior defensive lineman 20 for me, and a 7th round grade on him. So obviously taking him in the 4th round, I'm not a big fan of. There was a big run on interior defensive lineman, So I get why they made the move. I just don't love Cam Young. He's a developmental guy. He flashes a solid bull rush. I just think at other positions there were better players available, and I think he could have waited. So I'm going to give this a D+. Not quite as bad as the Bradford pick, but not a pick I necessarily like. So I guess I kind of lied. There's 2 picks in this class I don't like for them. Then we move on to Mike Morris, who is an edge rusher. They added another edge rusher here in the 5th round. And this is a bit of a reach for me as well, but this is a different kind of reach. So let me explain that real quick. He was edge 35 for me, had a 7th round grade on him, but doesn't look like he's going to be an edge rusher in Seattle from what I've seen. It looks like they're going to ask him to put on weight and kick into the interior of their defensive line. So that makes a bit more sense because he's not the fastest guy in the world, and his tape as an edge rusher was not great, but his skill set does project better as an interior defensive lineman. He's a good run defender, has good length, good strength. This is an intriguing developmental pick. If they're going to have him play as a 3-4 D end or a defensive tackle in their weird hybrid defense that they run, I like him as a developmental interior defensive lineman a hell of a lot more than I like him as an edge or an edge rusher. So I'm going to give this a C+. Instead of putting this in the D range like the last two picks that I also thought were reaches, I'm going to give this a C+ because I see better upside there, and I like the role he's going to play for them a lot more. Continuing on in the 5th round, their next pick was Olu Oluwatimi, a center out of Michigan, and I like this pick. We're back to the picks I like. He was my 9th rated interior offensive lineman, 3rd round grade, and he's just a developmental center. High IQ, good pass blocker. He's pretty damn strong, especially in his core. Not somebody that you're going to get a lot of bend out of. He's not going to, bend on it while he's blocking, which is really good. And he's really good on double teams. Now, I will say he doesn't create a lot of drive off the line of scrimmage. He's not a great athlete. He's not a great reach blocker. But if you just need somebody to double team with your guard while run blocking and can hold his own as a pass blocker, that's what you're getting here. And to my knowledge, that's what the Seahawks are looking for. Now, if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. But as a whole, going to give this a B+. Definitely like this pick. I like Olu. I think he's a good fit here. And kind of makes up for them passing on interior offensive line earlier on, but not really. Moving on to the 6th round, their next pick was a safety by the name of Jarek Reed, and I'm going to be honest, I did not watch his tape before the draft, but as I keep saying, I did catch quite a bit after the draft, did my research there, and what I came away with was a super small athlete. Like, he's small, but he's really athletic, high IQ guy, very patient, he's got a lot of experience. He's a little handsy, but he's going to be learning behind Quandre Diggs, which is fantastic for him, and he's going to be a good special teamer. He's going to be a fun player to kind of follow in the NFL, see where he ends up, see what he ends up doing. So I like the pick. In the 6th round, good process, good project pick. Going to give this one a B. Just really can't complain with this one. And then finally, in the 7th round, they took running back Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia, and this was a really good value pick. McIntosh was the 18th highest rated running back for me, had a 6th round grade on him, so it's good value. And essentially, he's your Travis Homer replacement, who left for my Chicago Bears, obviously. He's not the fastest guy in the world, had roughly a 4.6 40 time, but he's an awesome pass catcher, 0 drops throughout college on like 70-some targets, really good route runner, and he's just the ideal RB3 for this group. You've got your Thunder and Lightning with Charbonnet and Walker, and now you've got your 3rd down back, your scat back, whatever you want to call him, and Kenny McIntosh. So your running back room is really complete here in Seattle. They did a good job of really fleshing that group out and making it a whole. So definitely can't complain there. I'm going to be honest, I don't love McIntosh as a player, but good fit. I like his skill set for what the Seahawks are going to ask of him. So I'm going to give this a B+. Not quite a home run pick, because like I said, I did have a 6th round grade on him, but Definitely good process. So as a whole, I really like what Seattle did. Apart from the Bradford pick and the Young pick, big fan of what they cooked up. So grading this draft is really hard for me because it's a borderline. I want to give them an A. I really do, at least an A-. But those 2 picks being in the D range is just too much for me to really justify giving them an A. So I'm going to give them a B+, but just know it is about the highest B+ you can give out. Really like what Seattle did. It's just those 2 picks are really going to hurt their grade point average this semester. God, you can tell I got school on the brain. But yeah, that's going to do it for my NFC West draft grades. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like down below and definitely subscribe. We're slowly creeping up to 200 subscribers. Definitely trying to make that push here very, very soon. And I've got tons and tons of fun content coming your way this summer. So, definitely want to be on the lookout for that. Definitely don't want to miss any of that. A ton of collaborations. We're going to be talking about all 32 teams, what they did during the offseason, all that fun stuff. So definitely be on the lookout for that, like I said. And make sure to let me know in the comments down below who your favorite pick was from each of these teams. For me personally, I got to go with Kobe Turner for the Rams, Derek Hall probably for the Seahawks. For the 49ers, I guess I'll go with Darrell Luter. And for the Cardinals, I would say Michael Wilson. Those are going to be my 4 picks. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like I said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And make sure to be on the lookout for more of these division draft grade videos. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. And I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.